Hi everyone! Last week we did a lot in reading. We read about Earth Day, we read a nonfiction book, and we also drew a picture of an animal and we wrote caption, and we wrote labels for it. And we read a fiction book, and we learned how to build a bug hotel, which is really, really cool. Today we're going to start a new unit on fairy tales. Let me tell you a little bit about fairy tales first. Fairy tales have good characters. That smiley faces are to remind you that good means that they're good people and they're nice and they're helpful. They have good characters and evil characters. Evil means that they're mean or they're bad. So they have good characters and evil characters. Fairy tales also have magic. Like this wand is like a magic wand. There's magic in fairy tales. Fairy tales also have a setting. Does anyone remember what setting is? Setting is where the story takes place. So sometimes your story can take place at a house. Maybe it could take place at a park. Maybe in a castle. There's a lot of different places it can take place. And fairy tales have a beginning, middle, and end. That's a lot. So today we're just going to focus on good characters and evil characters. We're going to do that by reading a story. We're going to read the fairy tale Cinderella. Let me show you. Has anyone read this before? Or seen the movie maybe? See, this is a really good story. And while we're reading, we're going to try to think about the characters and figure out who is good and who's evil. Remember, a character is a person or a thing or a creature or an animal in a book. Characters can talk, and the story is about them. So we're going to read and figure out who our characters are. Once upon a time, there was a young girl named Cinderella. After her mother died, her father married another woman who had 2 daughters of her own. The 2 girls were lazy and selfish. That's not good. That means they're not very good people, I don't think. Cinderella was beautiful and kind, but her stepmother did not like her. When Cinderella's father died, the stepmother made Cinderella do all of the chores in the house. Would you like it if you had to do all of the chores in your house? That seems like a lot of work, right? Do you think Cinderella liked that? I don't know. We're going to read and find out if she liked it or not. Cinderella worked very hard. Her clothes turned to rags, and she had to sleep in the broom closet. Would you like to sleep in a closet? No, I bet she didn't like it either. One day, a royal messenger arrived. He brought a letter that said all of the young ladies in the kingdom were invited to a ball. A ball is like a really fancy dance that everyone goes to. The 2 stepsisters were very excited. They were going to meet the prince. Cinderella's stepmother and stepsisters went to the ball, but she could not go. Why do you think Cinderella couldn't go? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe we just have to think about it too. Let's see if we find out. She had no clothes to wear. Cinderella was so sad, but then her fairy godmother appeared. Ooh, look at her. She's a fairy godmother. Let's see what she does. The fairy turned Cinderella's rags into a beautiful dress with glass slippers. She turned a pumpkin into a fancy coach with footmen. A fancy coach is right here. It's almost like a car, but it's kind of an old car. It has wheels, and you kind of sit inside right there. And the footmen are right here, and they kind of push the carriage along. So she went from not being very fancy, she looked like that before, and the fairy godmother turned her into that. That's really cool. Do you think she can go to the ball now? Let's keep reading. Cinderella could go to the ball. Her fairy godmother gave her one warning. When the clock struck midnight, the spell would be broken and all of her nice things would disappear. So that means at midnight, her clothes would turn back to those clothes, and this would turn back to a pumpkin. So that's not good. She doesn't want that to happen. Cinderella went to the ball, and everyone thought she was very beautiful. Her stepmother and stepsisters did not recognize her because of the change in her clothing. The prince danced with Cinderella all night long. She had such a lovely time. She didn't notice it was getting late, very late. The clock began to strike 12, and Cinderella raced from the palace. She was in such a hurry, she never told the prince her name. Why do you think she was in a hurry? What made her rush out of the palace? What do you think? I think she had to leave really fast because the clock struck 12. That means it was midnight, and that meant that all of her clothes were going to turn back to her old clothes like before. So she wasn't going to look very nice for the ball. I think that's why she left. Let's see what happens next. While she was rushing down the castle steps, Cinderella lost one of her glass slippers. See there, it came right off of her foot. Oops. The prince wanted to find Cinderella, but she had disappeared. All he could find was one glass slipper. So now the prince has it. What do you think he's going to do with that slipper now? Maybe he's going to try to figure out who Cinderella is. Let's find out. That night, Cinderella's stepsisters told her all about the ball. They didn't realize she was the mysterious stranger who had danced with the prince. Cinderella kept her visit to the palace a secret. She probably kept it a secret because she didn't want to get in trouble. She wasn't supposed to go. The prince made a promise. I will marry the girl whose foot fits this slipper. He sent his duke to every house in the land. Every young lady tried on the slipper. So we were right. He's going to figure out who the slipper belongs to. The duke came to Cinderella's house. One stepsister tried on the slipper. Her feet were too big. So now Prince knows that it doesn't belong to her. The other stepsister tried on the slipper. Her feet were too big. The duke was about to leave when Cinderella came into the room. So the prince knows that it's not the stepsisters, but let's find out what happens when Cinderella tries it on. May I please try on the slipper? She asked. Cinderella's stepsisters were so angry. She was going to be a princess. Do you think they were happy to find out that she was going to be a princess? Or do you think they were upset? It looks like they were upset about it. You can kind of see their faces. They don't look very happy for her. The prince and Cinderella left her home and her mean stepmother and stepsisters. Cinderella and the prince were soon married and lived happily ever after. The last page says, the end. That was a good story. So now, we are going to think about each character, and we're going to figure out who was evil and who was good. So right here, I have a little paper for us to do. On the side right here, it says good characters up here. And I put a smiley face to remind us that these good characters are good people, and they're nice, and they're helpful. And then I have evil characters here. And those characters are not very nice. They make us sad when we read about them because they're not nice, and they're mean. So let's see, who is our first character going to be? I think I'm going to start with the stepmother. So what do you think? Think about the stepmother. What does she do in the story? I'm going to give you a second to think about it, and then we'll talk about it. Well, the stepmother first made Cinderella do all the chores in the house. Do you think that was a nice thing for her to do? No, I don't think it was very nice either. Did stepmother let Cinderella go to the ball? No, she didn't let her go to the ball either. So do you think she was nice to Cinderella, or was she mean? I think she was pretty mean to Cinderella, so that means she's an evil character. She wasn't very nice throughout the book. So let's see who's next. Let's do Cinderella next. What do you think about Cinderella? Is she good or was she evil? Let's think about this. In the beginning, remember she did all of the chores by herself? She did them, right? She never said, no, I don't want to do it. She just did them because she was told to. So that makes her pretty nice. She didn't try to break the rules. Did she do anything mean to anyone else? I don't think she did, right? I think she was a good character. I'm going to put her over here. She never did anything bad in the story. Now let's think. Let me find another character. Let's do the prince. What about the prince? What do you think? I'm going to let you do this one by yourself. I think the prince was good. He didn't do anything mean. He was just trying to figure out who the slipper belonged to. He wasn't mean about it. He was very nice the whole time. We have two more. Let's do this now. These are the stepsisters. Now, what do you think about the stepsisters? Were they nice to Cinderella? I don't know. What do you think? How did they feel when they found out the slipper fit Cinderella? Were they happy about that? Were they happy for her? Or were they kind of upset or angry? They were pretty upset about it, right? They didn't like her being a princess. And they weren't very nice to her. So I'm going to say that they're evil characters. They weren't very nice. And we have one more. Here we have the fairy godmother. The fairy godmother wasn't in the story very long, but what did she do? Remember, how did she help Cinderella? Remember, she turned Cinderella's dirty clothes into a beautiful gown, and she turned a pumpkin into a carriage for Cinderella so that she could get to the ball. That was a pretty nice thing to do, right? Yeah, I think that was nice, so I think that makes her a good character. So let's look at this one more time. Cinderella was good, Prince Charming was good, and the fairy godmother was good. Do you think that's good? Like, do you think we're right? Or do you think we're wrong? I think we're right. Now what about the evil characters? We have the stepmother and we have the stepsisters. Were they nice to Cinderella? No, they weren't. Stepmother made Cinderella do all the chores, and the stepsisters weren't happy for her when she became princess. So I think that makes them bad. They're evil characters. Thumbs down. All right, great job today. Now I want you to practice looking for characters more. Mrs. Clark made a list of a bunch of fairy tales on Epic, so you can log on to Epic and you can read your own fairy tales. And while you're reading, you can try to figure out who are the good characters and who are the evil characters. So this week, I want you to log on to Epic and do that. Try to figure out who is nice, who is evil. Remember, good characters are nice, they're helpful, and evil characters are mean. Have fun reading. Bye. Great job today.